In an age of fast fashion and fleeting trends, the tangible connection we once had with our clothing is all but gone, only to be found commercially at the highest price points. But even then, our draw to expensive, artisanal items isn't typically driven by the desire for well-crafted items, but to instead own something exclusive for the sake of vanity. We share our purchases on social media, we dress like our favorite celebrities, and pretend to live a life of luxury, all the while going into massive amounts of credit card debt with buy now, pay later services like Klarna, which encourage us to spend beyond our means. It's something I began to really take notice of lately. Our relationship with clothing has devolved as we're constantly fed fast fashion propaganda like Temu's Shop Like a Billionaire campaign, to the point where we're all just desperately trying to keep up with the latest trends, becoming less and less concerned with the quality and ethics of the products we buy, as long as it makes us look relevant for the time being. Since the rise of social media and fast fashion, there's been a paradigm shift. We tend to see clothing now as temporarily fashionable garbage, instead of something to invest in and take care of for many years. And it's easy for me just to tell you the negative impacts of fast fashion, why you shouldn't buy into it, and how we throw enough clothing away to fill 1.5 Empire State Buildings every day. How fast fashion has been linked to sweatshop labor, and how 87% of our clothing will just end up incinerated or in a landfill. But statistics don't really hit home until they affect us personally, I know, which is why I want this discussion to move beyond just fast fashion is bad, and instead talk about our individual, tangible relationship with clothing, and how that's almost entirely gone from fashion today. In the video, this is what was missing from video game adaptations from the channel like Stories of Old. The narrator, Tom Vanderlinden, talks about the concept of qualia, the intrinsic qualities of experiences that are directly available to introspection, as related to the Fallout show based off of the video game, and how those intrinsic qualities of the game were translated to an episodic television format. Aspects all-encompassing perceptual experiences, bodily sensations, emotions, and moods. And that video made me think about the same concept, qualia, in relation to fashion, and my interpretation of that is really about the tangible relationships we have with a garment or our entire wardrobe, both physically and metaphysically, and how that relationship has changed throughout history. How we experience a garment sensorially, how we feel the softness of the wool or cotton, how we feel the warmth of a scarf draped around our neck, or the rigidity of a new pair of jeans. These aspects of qualia, the physical aspects, we experience every day, but our metaphysical relationship with clothing, the deeper connection with our wardrobe, has been the missing piece in fashion for decades now. Pre-20th century, when we all used to make our clothing by hand, we cherished those items, wore them for years, repaired each hole manually, and when the garment would reach the end of its life, we would repurpose it. Our experiences with clothing and our relationship with our wardrobe was so tangible. But now, thanks to fast and ultra-fast fashion retailers like H&M, Zara, Shein, Primark, and more, giving us cheap garments you couldn't be bothered to really take care of, let alone alter, we've lost that sense of tangibility and personal pride in our clothing. We don't invest our time and energy into a garment anymore because we can click a couple buttons and 50 items from Shein will show up on our doorstep 2 days later. If we get an item that doesn't fit, we barely bother to return it because our financial investment isn't worth the effort. In the article Quantity Over Quality, How the Fashion Industry Has Changed Over the Years, it stated that in the 1970s, the average household would invest 10% of its income in clothing, and each family member would have about 25 pieces of clothing in their collection. Today, the average household spends only 3.5% of its income on clothing, about $1,700 per year. However, the number of garments has increased to around 70 pieces for each person in the household. We're generally spending less in proportion to our total income, but we have so much more, which isn't necessarily a good thing because those 70 garments we now have in our wardrobe are of significantly poorer quality than the 25 garments they used to have. We tolerate our fast fashion purchases because what can we really expect from a $5 shirt? Our financial investment isn't substantial enough to care about the user experience. This lack of excellence in quality and valuing a pleasurable experience when it comes to clothing is just indicative of the race to the bottom from fast fashion brands, grooming us to accept lower and lower standards. But this isn't a new phenomenon. Companies have always been trying to lower standards while increasing profits. In fact, I found a New York Times article from 1974 titled "Declining Quality in Clothing, the Makers and Sellers Tell Why." And that article explains how retailers and manufacturers at the time both agreed that the quality had been declining since World War II, and that what had been expediency at the time had now become a way of life. Fast manufacturing models needed during the war just stuck around, and this was due to a few reasons. The first being the lack of inspection at every stage of production. Quality checks were being eliminated throughout the entire process of making the garment, leading to little, if any, quality control. The second reason being the dwindling supply of skilled labor. When once garment workers in the fashion industry were being trained in Europe, the new entries into the industry frequently had very little training and no tradition of craftsmanship. Actually, in my other video titled "Designer Fashion is Changing," I talk about how I don't think many young designers today know how to actually create a quality garment. So it's a bit reassuring to see an article from the 70s carry that same sentiment. The third reason for the decline in quality was a lack of pride on all sides of the industry, and that the normalization of the assembly line and piecework, where one worker wouldn't see the end result of their work, meant that there was little or no sense of pride in the final product. And the author of the article noted that the lack of pride was probably the most significant factor in the decline in quality clothing. But the last reason was the built-in obsolescence of women's styles.
All just because I ripped my pants.
Done deliberately to encourage business. Quote, "There's no question that our poorest quality comes from the hot fashions fad manufacturer, no doubt about it. But there is no question that these new people are, in a sense, the lifeblood of our industry. Women at the time wanted trendy clothing and were willing to accept poor quality garments to get it, according to the manufacturers in the 70s. But interestingly, they noted that the quality of menswear at the time hadn't seen that same decline, because there was a different attitude around men's clothing, and men were generally looking for more durable garments, less focus on fashion.
50 cents, no refunds. Popcorn's a quarter, jelly bean and root beer's 2 bits.
Something that I think is still mostly true today, with one manufacturer actually coming out and just saying, "Our biggest problem is that our garments wear too long." Men's clothing was too durable, leading to less consistent sales. And I don't know why, but I was just a bit surprised to hear about planned obsolescence from an article in 1974. In the past, I've mostly associated planned obsolescence with technology, like when Apple was sued for slowing down their older phone models. But why aren't fast fashion companies being sued for the same thing? It's well known that brands like H&M, Shein, Temu, and Primark all sell clothing that won't last 5 washes, let alone years, but that's just okay and accepted. There's no big lawsuits against them, no regulations from the government or anything. Fast fashion companies don't own their production facilities, so they can't be held liable for the working standards there. They aren't responsible for the landfills full of their products that can literally be seen from space because they're so big. Fast fashion's whole business model is reliant on planned obsolescence, but we just actively partake in it and accept that personal pride in clothing. The ability to repair your own garments or to pass them down or to just buy a reliable garment that'll hold up for more than 5 washes is just gone. And to find something at that quality, you have to do some intense research. The only country that seems to be doing anything about it is France, who recently passed a bill that would fine fast fashion companies up to 10 euros for each garment sold within the country, but that they would also require fast fashion companies to label their products with an environmental hazard warning. I can't wait to see that in action and see if people actually start to second guess their purchases. Now, the bill is a bit vague on which companies will be affected and what's exactly defined as fast fashion and ultra fast fashion, but it's a start. So I hope to see other countries follow suit, but I'm not holding my breath. In that same article from 1974, when talking about the declining standards post-World War II, an interviewee mentioned that some retailers years prior had a reputation of being very tough, and if your dresses weren't absolutely perfect, you got them back. It doesn't happen anymore. And that since manufacturers started to get rid of quality checks at every step of production, that sense of metaphysical tangibility I've been talking about, those aspects of qualia, the value in the intangible experiences you would have with a piece of clothing, were disappearing even back in 1974, along with quality standards. And today, these issues have just compounded exponentially. Quality has declined more and more as mass production has ramped up. And when we once thought about H&M being as bad as it was going to get, Shein said, "Hold my beer." And in the past 6 years alone, Shein's profits have increased 20 times, and in 2025 they're expected to make over $50 billion. According to the Harvard Business Review, Zara introduces approximately 35,000 new styles per year, which is an insane number alone. But that Shein launches approximately 1.3 million products in 1 year. And if we go by other reports that Shein releases between 7,000 and 10,000 new styles each and every day, that number shoots up to between 2.5 and 3.65 million new styles each year. And that's not total garments produced, those are new separate styles. The level of production at Shein, at the cost of human rights and ethical labor and deforestation and all the environmental issues, is actually incomprehensible. Which is why I think most people just don't care, because you can't comprehend the damage that they're doing. Clothing has deteriorated in quality and price so much just since World War II that it's practically unrecognizable now. It's like the meme, what would happen if you gave a Victorian child a Four Loko? But what would happen if you gave a modern person a Victorian quality piece of clothing? They would be shocked. It would be like clothing from a new dimension or another world. That's why all of those pieces of clothing are now in museums, because they're just on a different level. But also in my research, I actually found a ladies' home journal from 1908. And if you don't know, Ladies' Home Journal was a magazine published in the late 1800s, early 1900s, and it was labeled the Bible of the American Home, because it had everything in it from how to arrange roses in a vase to how to properly disinfect a bite from a rabid dog before you contracted rabies and died, and then the next page would be like how to properly make your bed and launder your summer clothes. It was basically Google in the early 1900s. But in it, I found some ads for some mail order clothing, like this one for a $5 dress, and $5 back then has the purchasing power of about $386 today. And this dress advertised a full skirt and a perfect fit, giving an entire season's wear. When you ordered it, you could customize the colors and the trims, and you would approve it before accepting it to ensure the quality. But something I thought that was interesting in this ad was that it stated, all seams felled. And if you don't know what a felled seam is, it's a very strong seam that completely encases the edges of the fabric so that no raw edge is visible. And today, felling is really only popular on the inseams of denim jeans or on some seams of dress shirts or other more elevated items. It's a common seam, it's more expensive, but it's rarely or never seen on every seam of a garment like this advertisement claims this dress has. Clothing that was an investment. It would be fashionable for the season, then you would alter it for the next. You would never just throw away a garment after wearing it for one season. That would be a ridiculous notion. But But I also found this ad for the American Lady shoe for between $3 and $4, which is about $270 when spent on a purchase today. And it's advertised as an economical shoe. But it's made of Russia calf leather, a very durable and high quality leather with a very lengthy manufacturing process. Today, for the same price of about $270, you can get the Doublet Sui Soak Collab toe shoes in canvas. If you want Russia calf leather today, you're gonna have to fork over about $2,100. But in this magazine, when we get to the fashion department section, we see this article about how to repurpose your clothing from last year to fit this year's vacation, which essentially detailed how to build a basic wardrobe which you can then alter to each season's needs. There's also ads for clothing patterns which you could buy for a few cents and make your own clothing from, if you didn't want to purchase a pre-made garment for the equivalent of almost $400. And I love this fashion guide on what not to wear that talks about how good taste is built on the ideals of classical simplicity, and that where most people go wrong when building an outfit is trying to put too many items into it. It becomes too busy, and it's best to just keep things simple, which is something I think is still very relevant today, and a lot of people could heed that advice. But look at this ad for Bella's Hess & Co. dress for $3.95, the equivalent purchasing power of $305 today. And in this very detailed description of exactly what you would be getting with this dress, it states that while for the low price of about $300, they wouldn't be able to alter the length of the garment for you, they added a deep hem so that you can alter it yourself. And that's something else that's missing from fashion today. A deep hem, meaning that there's extra fabric sewn into the hem of the garment so that if you need to lengthen it or shorten it, you can easily do so. That's a concept that's completely unheard of now, except for high fashion, very expensive garments. The only pants I've ever bought that had extra fabric in the hem were from Alexander McQueen and Ami Paris, both costing over $800 at retail. Because extra fabric means extra cost. That inability to alter our own garments, combined with the lower quality materials used today, often synthetics or blends of synthetics, are major reasons why our clothing, fast fashion typically, is designed to end up in a landfill shortly after its purchase. It's not a bug, it's a feature. Ingrained planned obsolescence, slowly taking things away from our clothing until nothing is left but disposable plastic garbage. This lady's home journal from 1908 is proof of that. It shows us a time when people took pride in ownership. They invested themselves physically, emotionally, and financially into taking care of their wardrobe. They followed the ethos of better, not more, and they were invested in the qualia of a garment. The experiences, tangible and intangible, one would have with their clothing on a daily basis. The mending of a hole, the changing of a trim, altering the proportions to fit you perfectly like a glove. A true relationship with their wardrobe that has slowly vanished over time from the masses. But I truly believe that people want that level of quality in their clothing back. They just don't know that they're missing it. It's why shows like Margiela's Artisanal 2024 collection had such a profound impact on the fashion industry this year. That show had a level of tangibility unseen from mainstream fashion. It embodied those aspects of qualia within a garment that were once standard, a glimpse of the past. And it's easy to say, back in the good old days, and reminisce of a time long gone. But it's not gone. You can find that connection today, that sense of pride and ownership. You just have to look for it. So what can you do? Where can you look? Well, first and foremost, adopt that mindset of better, not more. Stop caring about the passing fads and trends you see on TikTok and Instagram, and slowly start to build a wardrobe of basics and items that are comfortable to you and you feel comfortable in. Garments that are high quality, well made, with natural materials when they should be, and shop secondhand or vintage when you can. And it might be hard to refrain at first, but stop buying from fast fashion brands entirely. Instead, start shifting your mindset to shopping less frequently, but buying higher quality when you do. I promise you won't be spending more money in the long run, you'll enjoy your clothing more, and you'll develop a healthier relationship with your wardrobe and probably your wallet. If you can, start trying to mend your own clothing as well. If you get a hole in your sweater, you don't need to throw it away, you can just sew it up. And buy with the intention of keeping your garments for years and potentially passing it down to another generation or donating it or selling it to another fashion lover. It's a change in mindset, a paradigm shift. So take it one step at a time. Start doing a little research here and there, and start thinking more about what your next purchase will be, why you need it, and what hole it fills in your wardrobe. And because I know I'll be asked about brand recommendations, I've listed some brands in the description below that prioritize slower fashion. It's not an exclusive list, so if you have your own recommendations for sustainable and slow fashion brands, please share them as well, and share your thoughts. Do you want to have a more thoughtful connection with your clothing, or do you just enjoy the convenience of fast fashion? If you care about quality, you're looking for that more thoughtful relationship with your wardrobe, and if my videos provide value to you, I've just started a Patreon where you can support my channel and become a part of this growing community. The link is in the description below. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.